Let's be clear. One, it is great news that the elected Democrats on the state level and then also in collaboration with the federal level will be investigating incidents of ICE abuse, right? Particularly in Los Angeles, but this is a great idea that ultimately will be expanded across the nation, hopefully, right? But even then, when is it that this will take into effect, right? We investigate right now. That impact is supposed to happen after this is done. It's not meant to prevent what is happening right now, what is happening in California, what is happening in Oregon, what is happening in Illinois, what is happening in New York, right? It's not stopping any of that. It's not stopping the fact that the ICE has been buying targeted missiles, have been buying military equipment in order to use against American cities. And then you say, well, I don't want to trigger martial law. Well, I don't want to trigger invoking the Insurrection Act, which they know is going to happen whether you do it or not. That's why they're buying these things. Or it could be to make fear on you, right? That they can use it against you. Ultimately, what they want you to do is to comply in advance, right? And here's the thing, I've been saying the only reason that it would expand to other cities and states is because the original one, right? California failed in our actual strategy, which is lawsuits and then begging the government to not do it. These are two avenues that California has been doing, and it's failed. Newsom has been saying the same thing, right? He said, help keep yourself and your community safe, remain peaceful. What do you mean by peaceful? Obviously, it is important to remain peaceful, but obviously, self-defense in itself is not being peaceful. It's not violence, right? So ultimately, what we saw in New York when ICE went into the streets and the New Yorkers, chasing them out of the city, that is peaceful, right? And we have to recognize that there are avenues in which this will ultimately have an outcome in, right? It's either going to be that the state commander in chief, because the local has not as much power as the state commander in chief against the federal. So obviously they're sending you to the local because they don't want to deal with going between the people and the federal. They want the local to do it. But ultimately the local doesn't have as much power as the state, right? So either the state governor, commander in chief, is going to start the assembly of a 2A task force in order to defend the state laws and the state itself, or that's going to be created, according to traditional history and political crisis, by the people, right? Who ended the Rwandan genocide in 1994? That was over 800,000 Tutsi Rwandans were, expired on 100 days. Why? Because the Hutu Rwandans didn't like that tribe, right? There was a radio host who said, cut down the tall trees, and then everyone was like, signal, we're gonna go unalive all of these people, and that's what happened, right? No government wanted to help. They didn't want to intervene. The UN was there. The UN didn't intervene much. So ultimately, what we have to acknowledge is that at a point, depending on what country it is and what value there is, either entities will get involved or won't. When it comes to the United States, so many entities are scared of it. So it's Americans having to be the ones to have action, direct action against toppling this, right? So if the elected Democrats are just focused on the aftermath of accountability, that doesn't satisfy what's going to stop it right now, because they do not believe that they have the power to stop it right now on the federal level. On the state level, they do, if you live in a blue state, right? But they don't have the guts to do that yet. And that means that we have to put them on the intersection where they have to choose between the people and the federal. Right? What happened in New York is an example of that. What has been happening, in Chicago is an example of that. What hasn't been happening in Portland is an example of that. What has been happening in Los Angeles and California is an example of that. But in California, I don't know if maybe I hold my state to much more regard, because there's literally 15 million Latinos in California out of nearly 40 million. So the fact that California Governor Gavin Newsom does not seem to have the same urgency and action as other governors is very problematic to me, right? But also the fact that there should be much more rising to the moment, and what I see is usually women going against ICE and them being the Joan of Arc who tells other men, hey, use your car, and then they do it, which I love, but also we have to recognize that it is women who are rising to the moment right now. And whether this assembly of citizen group under our fundamental rights is done without the actual tool, which I would say would have to be done initially, and then an escalation depending on the government, because that is under our fundamentals. I won't expand on that because that's why my primary was banned, Federalist 28. We have to recognize that if they already are planning to utilize military strategy against us, then we have to get guerrilla. And by guerrilla, don't mean literally the actions of it. I mean that you have to conduct uh operations of patriotism in a way that isn't as public as you would like to. And then when it's public, you have to use your brain. If you're recording, know what to blur, know what to take out, know how to protect the community. We have to think of these avenues now, because ultimately, in order to win, we have to protect our fighters. And they're going to be the ones who will achieve the reality in which a state governor in the blue state is going to be forced to choose between the people and the feds. And that's what we need to do, because the leverage here isn't against the federal Democrats, it is against the state Democrats, right? Blue states, California, fourth largest economy, yet we're over here being like, he's retaliating against us, and then we're funding the money to retaliate against us, aren't we? So we have to think smarter, and we have to stop assuming that just writing it through is going to fix it, because it's not. Yes, accountability is beautiful, but what's going to stop it now? Not that accountability, action. And what action is that? It's either going to be from the state or it's going to be from the people. I would rather from the state, but I'm for whatever. I'm a rise to the moment, and I'm always rise for my country.